I'd like to call the Berlin Boylston Region and Union 60 school committees to order. We have some payroll and cable warrants going around, and welcome guests, by the way. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any other discussion, questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have no communications at this point. Do we have any petitions and audiences related to items on the agenda? Okay, so then I'm going to start with our reports. Michael, you get to go first.
Thank you. Hello, members of the school committee. We're in December now, so students get a nice vacation next week. We're about halfway through the quarter. So we got our progress reports last Friday, so students are just kind of running on academically. Winter sports started as well. Boys varsity basketball has had 2 games. They've lost both, but yesterday was pretty close. And girls varsity basketball has won 1 game, and that's all they've played. Spirit Weeks, middle school Spirit Week has started already, and high school Spirit Week starts Thursday, so hopefully we'll get some school spirit going. And the student council, their apple sale that they had last month actually went pretty well, and they raised $500. So hopefully that'll go to some cool things in the future. That's really all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a PTO representative or anything? Okay. Superintendents report.
Can we just skip over mine and Karen's until she returns?
Oh, yes, that's right.
We're trying to put it together, so we'll go to D.
Okay. Actually, oh, D. Oh, thank you. Director.
So, put out a proposal for a rehabilitation study. 2 proposals in. I've included both proposals in your packet.
Julie, can I ask a favor? I'm kind of far away. I don't hear very well.
All right, so we got 2 proposals in. I'm making a recommendation to accept the proposal from the Abrams Group. I think it much better addressed what the committee was looking for the study. So I don't know what we need to vote, right? Just
Yeah, they do. They need to vote to approve the recommendation to go forward with the Abrams study.
Do I have that motion?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Okay. Someone second it?
I can, but I would like to make a few comments.
Matt, you have a question?
I'm just curious, so from looking at the 2, obviously pretty significant difference, and what is the reasoning and the specifics? Because obviously you're a little bit closer to that as to why the Abrams over the other.
really, the other one wanted to do a demographic study, which wasn't what we were asking for. We already
Missed
had
the
the
target.
enrollments kind of done in the last study, so we were really looking for more in-depth financial analysis.
Hard to the numbers. Okay.
This proposal was much stronger in that, but the other one was kind of going off to a different path than what we were looking for.
Excellent.
It sounded like the Abrams Group had a lot of experience.
Yeah, looked like it.
With this, and it sounded like they'd be very helpful if you moved farther along in the process as well. Okay, so we,
Larry, I think you have a question.
So with the proposal for the demographic was sounded as if what they also planned a financial piece after that. But did we get any quotes or anything on that part of it, or did they just quote the part that we
They just
don't
quoted
necessarily?
for the demographic study. They didn't put a quote in for what we had asked for.
Interesting. Okay. And what the Abrams proposal will use all of the demographic information that has been previously compiled in their estimates? Is that the assumption?
That as well as the information you have with
Okay,
it. They won't start from scratch.
right. All right. Okay, I'm fine.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second, so I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Go back.
Yes, so now we'll go back to the superintendent's report about the China trip.
So Karen, Ben, and I went to Shanghai, as you know, in October. We wanted to explain to you a little bit of what we found, what we discovered, and some of our sister schools, and give you a little bit of an update. This was actually the first night that we were in Shanghai. You can see how tired we all are, because they just keep you going from 7 in the morning to 11 at night. And it was funny, when you sit down, they tell you where you need to sit. And they had Ben sitting in front of the screen, so he had left the room for a little bit. When he came back, they told him that because you sat in that seat, you now have to do karaoke. So he actually got up and started singing karaoke. So it was interesting.
It wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad. It was pretty good.
That was the first thought when I saw that picture. I'm like, no, could be
Yes,
karaoke.
oh yes, he was singing all kinds of lovely songs. So we were cackling, but it was good. And then this was the food. This is typically what they do in China, is they put the food in the circle like this, like the Lazy Susan, and then you move it around and get the food that you want. Unless if you sit next to somebody and you are their honored guest, they actually will serve the food for you, whether you want it or not. So I said to Karen, how did you luck out? She goes, because I'm not the honored guest, you are. So I was being served my meal. We started off, actually at the beginning, the reason why we actually went there was it was a 4-day workshop. So for 4 days, we all presented about social emotional abilities in our schools and how we work with counselors and school psychologists in our public school system. They currently don't do that. They do that at the elementary school at a very small level, and they just started doing special education services at the elementary school. So they don't service students with significant disabilities at the high school, but they're seeing a rise in social emotional dysregulation, and so they're trying to learn more of what we do here in America. So we were able to, for 4 days, actually work with a group of educators regarding that.
And they're actually where we were probably back in the 50s, where students with special needs aren't even allowed in the school. They have to test to get into the high school. So those kids are always taken care of by their families. So as things change over there, they're trying to learn more. This is when we went to meet with the Yangpu Education Bureau. It felt a little like the UN. We had their side and our side, and we were doing negotiations. Very formal over there. Everything was formal. So they had a nice welcome sign. We had to take a picture of that. Because Nadine and I laughed the whole time we were over there. We felt illiterate because you can't recognize anything, not even a letter, a word, anything, because it's all in pictures. So we just had to take their word for what everything said. This is one of the elementary schools we went to. Now, this is the sister school for Berlin. It's an ecological school, so basically a science school. They have gardens everywhere for the children to wander in, peaceful gardens. They had gardens that were vertical, and they were growing vegetables and things on them. So everything was about the growing and about the wetlands. They were right off of the wetlands. They actually have a museum right in their school, which the students gave us a tour of. We'll probably see pictures of that. And they gave us a tour in English, which was really nice. They were very scared, but they gave us a nice tour. The one in the middle is every morning the kids do exercises in China. It's kind of like a green gym. They get everybody up and moving and energetic first thing in the morning. And so this was just a picture of the little guys doing that.
One thing I thought was interesting, you can see that they have the rope, and what Karen and I noticed is that every single thing that they do is methodical and has a reason. So in our culture, We have children, they play jump rope, they learn the jump rope. Okay, put the jump ropes away, we fold them away or roll them up and we just throw them. They had the students literally fold them, and they were learning mathematically that this is a half, this is a quarter. And so every single thing that they do was a lesson to be learned. This is their science. This is what Karen was talking about. They actually had this museum about the wetlands in their school. So we were able to walk around, and on the left side is their STEM integration classroom.
So this is us in science class. Everything they did is integrated with their classes, which is one of the things that we found really interesting. It's what we try to do, but I think they're so much more successful. So in science class, they did all kinds of things with math and reading, and this was art. Art was integrated into all of the classes, as well as having a separate art class. So we were making, they were talking about the wetlands, and we were making some art pictures using grasses from the wetland. And then on the right is the whole group. One of the things we found really interesting was that every school has a Communist Party leader who's in charge of the school. And the lady in white is the head of the Communist Party for that school. And they're basically a curriculum coordinator for the school, but they're making sure that they're teaching the national curriculum. So we kept saying, well, we have curriculum coordinators, they're just not quite tied with public, with parties, so very similar.
This is Boylston's sister school. One thing that we found very interesting here is, let me just back up for a little minute. This is the Yangpu Educational Bureau. So in Shanghai, there's 8 districts. Yangpu Educational Bureau is the highest performing district in all of Shanghai. Shanghai is the highest performing school system in the world. And Boylston's sister school, the primary school, is actually the #1 performing elementary school in all of Shanghai and all of the Yangpu. So they said that they were actually pretty impressed that they chose to give us this school as one of our sister schools. Quite an opportunity. But you can see on the left all the statues that are there. Those are actually the children, the students there. And what they did is they had a local artist that actually made the sculptures of all the students, and they're all over throughout the school. It's actually a beautiful school. And we're assuming, because we were told, so we're just going to take their word for it, that that says Welcome Boylston Elementary School, because we really can't read it. And on the right, they actually, this is an after-school club that they offer, and for the Dragon, and so Karen and I each tried, and then at one point, somebody looked at Karen and said, "What are you doing?"
Perfect English, though.
Yeah, all in perfect English. So we were laughing at that. I started jumping and dancing with them, and they were following me laughing. They thought I just didn't know what I was doing.
So art and music classes. On the left, we did an art class. We made their baby booties. Baby booties are considered a symbol of good luck because children are so revered in China. And so, and there's a tiger on the front to ward off any evil spirits. So we made them while we were there, and they told us they're going to ship them to us, but at the same time, they gave us ones that the children had made to bring back to the school. So in Boylston, we have some of the shoes on display in Boylston from their sister school. And the music class, I wish everybody could see this music class. We were so impressed by it. This was a music class where during a half-hour period, the teacher taught voice. She did some keyboarding with a very interesting instrument with the students. They read music. They did geography about where the song was from. They looked at the pictures of the islands. It was from, I'm going to say it wrong. Where was the islands? The Indonesian islands? Indonesian. Okay. And so then the kids had to make the shape of the island with their stools. So she did a little geometry. So that's what we're talking about, how they integrate all the subjects into everything. So it was a half-an-hour lesson, and they did so much during that half-hour time.
This is the student artwork, and so what's amazing is that the teachers have not put one speck of ink or crayon or anything on these drawings. These are 100% done by students. And the one on the left is first grade. And the one on the right is second grade.
In their whole school, they have on display student and teacher artwork. That's their artwork in the building.
So this is actually in the high school, the middle school that Ben actually had visited. And so these are all the classrooms are really pretty modern. They have the technology, you can see up on the top, there's 3 cameras. They actually video the teachers teaching, and they will give reflections and self-assessments back, as well as peer assessments. And they also have opportunities where teachers will sit in the classroom and they will watch the classroom and give feedback on how their practices can be improved. So this was the sister school for Tohoto. And you can see Nan, who's a resident here in Boylston. She's right next to Ben. She was amazing, and because of her, we were even able to have this opportunity, which is just amazing. All of the schools, every school we went to, have some kind of atrium or garden area for children to be able to reflect. What I really love, and I wish there was a way in our culture we could do something like this, but one thing I just absolutely love is, especially at the high school, is they have these 10 minutes in between classes. Kids and teachers, they have time. They can talk in between classes, or the students maybe have to work on something, or maybe they didn't understand an assignment. They went back to the teacher, and it just gave the students that opportunity of respect and of freedom. That's really, I just think it's just an amazing piece of the culture. And you don't see teachers, watching or making sure. It's just understood you're going to behave. It's understood that you're going to do what's expected and what you need to do to improve yourself. But obviously that culture has to be instilled at a very young age, because by high school they had all that freedom. Ben was also able to visit a private school. Karen talked about the brain gym, and this is the same thing. They do this all the way through grade 12. So this is the first 15 minutes. On the left side is the middle school. On the right side, you see some middle school in the front, and then there's high school students in the back.
This was a local community college. These are the folks that we met on the first night, and they really wanted to kind of have some discussions with us, and they invited Ben to come back and see the college. And I think it was very similar. We talked about some of the programs. Their community college is very much similar to our community college.
So really what we wanted to talk about is what does this all mean? And what does this mean for Berlin-Boylston and for each school? You have previously signed a contract, and when I went over there, it was such a big deal to go over and actually talk to them, because they had issues with the contract and I couldn't understand what their issues were until I went over there. And then what I realized was we had signed a contract that was one, and it said the Yangpu Educational Bureau. The problem is the Yangpu Educational Bureau has over 200 schools. So the contract we were saying is basically stating over the 200 schools, which is not at all what we meant, which is not what they want us to mean either. So what you will have tonight is to vote to actually approve what it is it's a global one that addresses all 3 schools with the Educational Bureau without the specifics. And then there's a separate contract for each school that's specific to each partnership school. So it's just a technicality. Our attorney, Russ Dupre, has already looked at it and said, absolutely, this makes sense. So we are all set with everything. They're actually in agreement with all the revisions that we made with Russ. So you'll have that again tonight, and I apologize, but that's not the first time that you've had to sign it. It's just, there was definitely a communication gap between trying to do it on emails and translation wasn't making sense. So when I went over there, it actually made sense of what we needed to do. So. But what we are able to do through this is to have teachers and students exchange program. And in fact, Diane and I have been working with our Global Studies Committee. We have potential of having a couple of students coming here from China this year in February, right, Diane? I think it's the first, right before February vacation. And we'll be asking some parents to do some hosting for those 2 weeks. We just don't know how many students we have. And so the idea is they also want to see if we could get some students in our music department to go over, and they want to do an international music exchange that would include the Chinese, our schools, our students and their students would learn the same song, and they would get together and do an actual international performance. So we also have teachers at the elementary schools. We presented to all the schools. We already have teachers at the elementary schools that are already thinking of collaborative ideas. Some are thinking of doing a book, and then they would add pages to the book, and we would have an international book on traditions and cultures. And so there's a lot of great little ideas that we're doing. It's opportunities for teachers to come here, for our teachers to go there, for students to come here, and our students to go there. So that's one of the opportunities, and that's going to depend upon how comfortable we are at each time that happens. It's not like, oh, it has to happen. It's an opportunity addresses itself. We see if it makes it, if we can make it work. Teacher training and teacher classes where they can learn from one another. We're looking at some media, video conferencing opportunities. Course construction, we look at their curriculum, they look at our curriculum, which is funny. They gave us a curriculum, one of the schools, they said, we want to give you the curriculum. So we said, oh, this is great. So they gave us the curriculum. We get back to the hotel, I look at Karen and I said, well, this is great, but it's all in Chinese. So I can't read it, but it looks like it's a thorough curriculum. And then also, just like we've done, we went over as administrators and helped them. We would like those administrators to come over here and help us as well. Do you want to talk about this or you want me to? Okay, so by having these partnerships, I just want to say what this is also resulted here at Tohoto specifically is for the last about 3 years or so, we have been researching the Global Studies program. This is the first year that we have some potential seniors actually that will be able to graduate with a Global Distinction Diploma. So we're already starting this process of Global Distinction. We have our first service learning trip going to the Dominican in February with 17 students. And we also have been able to open the doors for more international travel. And our model UN has developed more aggressively. We have a middle school and high school group working together. Our Global Citizenship is also a club that started that's including our middle school and high school Global Citizenship. And this is something too, as well as the Amnesty International. So those are just the beginning of what we've been able to do for global competency. And I think we've talked a lot about it, and it's our moral duty to teach our students about the global world. And it doesn't have to be China. China just happens to be one great opportunity that we have, but there's many different opportunities that we can do and start local and move outward in regards to global citizenship. So.
Can I just add, China is one of the reasons we're interested in China is because all of the research tells us that they're really our competition in the global economy. They've really built their economy over the years. And so we know that our kids are going to be working a lot with people in China in the future. So we want to get ready. The linguists are always recommending that we start teaching kids Chinese while we're in school. So it's a nice opportunity for our children to kind of be ahead of the game. When we were over there, we met a lot of Americans who lived part-time in China and part-time in America, or worked for a company and they went between the two. I think we're already there where they've opened up those borders and there's a lot of moving back and forth.
Mm-hmm. There was a statistic too that I just read in a book, and basically what it says is if you were to take everybody in the world, and for every 100 people in the world, 5 are from North America, 50 are from Asia. So we need to start thinking about how we're going to make sure our students are really ready. Angela, do you have a question?
I was just going to say, to add on to what Karen said, I think one of our committee members is working in China as we speak.
Right now as we speak.
So it's a prime example of just the global economy and companies back and forth.
The world's getting smaller.
Yeah.
Right. So really, Karen and I just wanted to end, and I know if Ben was here tonight, he'd want to say the same thing, is that we thank our teachers for all their work and dedication. Because of their hard work and because of the success of our schools is what put us on the chart to even be recognized from Shanghai, to even be a part of it, and to have this opportunity. But it's also the support from our community. When we first opened our STEM advisory group and our global group, we had over 40 to 50 parents there in that very first night. Our global meeting that we had, Diane, in September, Diane said to me, this is one of the biggest you know, the largest attendance we've ever had in Tohoto because of the interest of the global understanding of what we're doing with our global studies and our global programming. So it's really the support of the community that allows this to happen, and also all of you guys as school committee members to support this program going forward. So we thank you.
Thank you, guys. I have a couple quick questions too, though. Like,
Yeah.
when we, in perspective of being selected to sort of partner with them, is there a pool or a paneling process that occurred that kind of put us there? Is that kind of the first? And then the second to that is, do we have feedback from them? Have they implemented and put into action any of the things you guys were able to share? And like, I know there's probably a little bit more bureaucracy involved with them moving things forward, but...
What I can tell you is I've been in touch with Dan, who gets the evaluations, and she said that we've got one of the highest evaluations that they've given while we were over there with our presentations and the feedback from the educators. We didn't officially see it, I don't know if they can release it, but she said it was very good, and they were very pleased, and that's what made them wanting to, I mean, they keep asking me, when are they signing, when are they signing, because they have all these ideas that they want to continue the progress. So they were very excited about that. Prior to this even happening, Nan had actually brought over a couple of people from China, and they toured our schools, and we had to give an interview with them. I met with them, we talked with them about what our programs offer. I had to give a profile of the elementary schools as well as the high school. So there was a process that they went through to see and to determine which schools would actually match. And I think to have the schools that match perfect for, I don't think we could have chosen better sister schools for our schools based on our dynamic and our profile. So yeah, that's really what they did. They also were impressed when they came over. We had scored the top in our MCAS scores, and so for the high school, the highest performing at the high school in our ELA, and where the English is really important for them. That was a very important process too.
Thanks.
So, all right. Did I answer all the questions?
The other one was just, but have they any impact on their side? Have they looked at?
Oh, yeah, good
are they?
question.
Yeah.
So have we had an impact on them? I know that they brought a lot of ideas back. Karen and I spent a lot of time doing case studies. And because at first they were saying, oh no, we don't have students like that, we don't have students like that. So then we started throwing some scenarios out to them. And you know, we tweaked and adapted our presentation. Then we were hoping we didn't get in trouble because we had to submit our presentation ahead of time for approval from the government before we could actually present. And we were hoping that we weren't getting into trouble. But actually what happened was by doing the case studies and we started throwing actual scenarios, they're like, oh yeah, we do. So then we said, well, what do you do in those cases? So then we had them all brainstorm what they would do, and then we sat down and explained to them what we would do in America. And so they were writing down those. So we found that there's some things that they can tweak and they can adjust very simply to be more efficient, just because of their lack of understanding of how to do it. And then there's some things where we said, well, that's a whole structural change that you're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, not easy.
Or not.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. I don't know. I think Karen, your report is next.
Yes.
Mine is next?
Next, yes.
Okay, so we told you a little bit about China in my report, so I won't go over that again, but just a couple of things I wanted you to know. We are moving to eSped. It's a new IEP management system. It's a much more robust IEP management system. It is the one that's probably used most often in this area. We have wanted to do it for several years, but it was kind of cost prohibitive. And at this point, we had to make a change. Our program was going away, it was antiquated, so we had to do something. So we talked with eSped, and eSped made a deal with us so that it really is costing us just about the same as what our current program does. So that's going to happen in February. I'm hoping parents won't see much of a difference, that it'll be a smooth transition, but there may be a few bumps when we first change over. The staff is going to be trained in January to do that. I also wanted to just bring your attention to some of the move-in students we've had. We've had kind of an unusual year with move-in students. 11 at last count move-ins, and several significant ones which we haven't really had in the past. Several moving in district, especially at Tohoto, who are already out of district in placements, one of them residential. So that's had an impact on the budget. We've been very creative in trying to find the money for it for this year, and it has an impact for next year, but I just wanted to kind of give you the heads up on that piece of it. And the last piece is the coordinated program review. I had told you previously it was due next year in 16-17. Because NEASC is happening at the same time, they were going to put off Tohoto, so we talked with DESE, and we were able to put all three off so that we didn't have to do two separate coordinated program reviews. So we're doing all of them the following year, so it's been put off for 1 more year. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Karen? Okay, moving on, and I think we'll skip the director.
Well, I was going to say, I can speak on it if you want to.
Sure, yes.
I'm actually going to skip over the elementary portion of her report because that won't pertain to you here, it'll pertain to you tomorrow night.
I was going to say it's a curriculum.
The curriculum.
report
Yep.
For the folks at home.
Sorry, yes. Also, the professional development has gone very nicely for this year. And so, however, the middle high school has really been focusing a lot on their NEASC because they'll be coming next October, so that's where the teachers have really been spending a lot of their time on that. Our initiatives with the Global Studies program, I spoke a little bit about that in China, and our STEM advisory board, we met last night, and we were able to have the Berlin members and the Boylston members actually talking about the different things that they've done, which was really great because now they're working together as an elementary subcommittee, if you will, group together. So that's very nice, and we're having them actually. Some of them have actually presented at Boylston Elementary School on some kits, science kits with our engineering and meeting the standards. And now they're going to go to Berlin, and they're going to do the same with the teachers there in Berlin as well. It was so well received at Boylston Elementary School. Some of the events, Primary Source, we've been working with them, trying to find ways of partnering with them for some professional development opportunities. And we're hoping to have a night evening here where we could have an open event at Tohoto. We're still finalizing all of that, where it's kind of like a movie, like a webinar, where everybody can just come in about global understanding. So that'll be great. We have an author, Gregory Moan, who was on the New York Times best-selling list, who will be joining us in January at our elementary schools. And Science for Scientists, we're hoping to start actually in February with grades 4 and 8. Our grants have all been going underway. We're all in alignment with where we need to be with our Title I and Title II grants. Our kindergarten grant right now, we're still thinking that possibly will not be in effect for next year. So you'll see in the budgets right now, we've actually eliminated it from our budget. So if we do get it, that'll help us with our budgeting process. But right now, we're thinking that we're not going to get the budget. Carol and I went to an EEC training a couple of weeks ago, and EEC was telling us not to expect to receive that kindergarten grant. So and that's where we are with our report.
Okay, thank you. All right, Technology Coordinator's report.
Good evening. So again, you have my report. With the donations, I want to just highlight one more time, that we're very thankful for the parental support that we have. I sent you that link to the SoundCloud so you can get a taste of what some of the kids are doing in the music class here at Tohoto. They wanted to come tonight. I said, with the budget going on, we'll maybe do that in the future. So we have a couple kids, and Jeremiah would like to come as well as the instructor to show off a little bit some of that equipment. I also wanted to just give an online assessment update. Now that we're about 3 full years into online assessment, we're getting better at it, getting more efficient. Again, you can read within the report. We've made significant purchases and devices to make the ability to impact the day-to-day a lot less, especially here at the middle high school. When we did map testing, we didn't have to pull kids out of classes so that other kids could test. The curriculum could maintain and go on. I also included just a quick blurb about E-rate. I know I've seen it in the news a lot that there's been reports that districts aren't taking advantage of the E-rate program, so I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that Berlin and Boylston is taking advantage of that. E-rate, you all have, for those of you who don't know, when you look at your average phone bill and you get down the bottom and you see all the taxes and fees and whatever included in that, is a portion of every bill that goes to support the E-rate program, which is to support internet access. And in this case, they're starting to make major changes and make it more for hardware infrastructure. So again, just the quick, we used it this year to update the hardware at Berlin Memorial, and then next year we'll be doing the high school and Boylston Elementary. And the last thing, the security systems, we are going to have guests next month. The next meeting, Synergy, is coming out. But I just want to include that things are moving forward. We were able to use Synergy's draft report to get some quotes and get some work at least pre-started for the 2 elementary schools regarding some of their recommendations and security cameras, door swipes, that kind of thing. So it's all moving forward.
And I will say that we have received the report, but we are not bringing it to the school committee for public record for the safety of our buildings, but we will hear from Synergy what the recommendations will be of how some of the pieces of security that we want to add to our building.
You don't want to put on television
I
where
don't.
we're weak?
I don't want to say where we're weak or where we're strong.
Yeah.
Gee, why?
Yeah.
With
Can
those
I-
I'm sorry, Larry.
No, go, Matt.
I was going to ask, with those recommendations, what's the timing, expectations?
I think we'll talk more about that at the January meeting. We'll have a better
Okay.
understanding
Okay.
from them then.
Thanks.
I realize we have a huge agenda today. I'm wondering if maybe in January or sometime soon, we could have a discussion about Park 2.0, where are we headed
Sure, so on
testing-wise?
our future agenda items, we can put that down.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Paul. Next is principal's report.
You've all received my report. For review, I just want to highlight a couple of important points. As Eve had stated, we had an informational meeting for all high school students in grades 9 through 12 who are interested in the Global Distinction Program, which would allow them to graduate with a global distinction on their diploma. I'm happy to report that we had 34 students show up. Our first round of applications for current juniors and seniors is due on January 4th, and then our current freshmen and sophomore, their applications are due May 1st. The applications will be reviewed by department heads and administration. So we're very pleased with the outcome of the attendance. I'm also very proud of all of the members of the Tohoto community in regards to their giving in these holiday seasons. We were able to give out 4 wonderful food baskets. We're doing Salvation Army donations, a giving tree right out in the main lobby, as well as on Friday evening, the middle school student council is hosting a charity dance to raise money for local families here in Berlin and Boylston who are in need. And that was all, the kids, middle school student council, that was all their idea. So I'm very proud of them putting others before themselves. And lastly, our science department, December is Biotechnology Month. And once again, Lisa Sequeira has received a grant in which we are borrowing approximately $15,000 worth of biotechnology equipment from Harvard University for our AP biology students to be able to use during the month of December. So they are able to utilize equipment that is in the lab that students at Harvard University use in their biotechnology classes. So it's very exciting, it's pretty cool for the students to be able to do that. So I'd like to congratulate Lisa for continuing that. And Anyone have any other questions about anything else in the report?
Sounds great. No questions, sounds great.
Okay, moving on to business items then. First item is approve the annual report to the towns. Do you have any suggestions for changes? No. Okay. Do we know what assessment, state assessment, Massachusetts is going to do for sure yet? Did they come out with that?
So, yeah, well, first of all, this year, we're going to do park this year again.
Right.
Is what we're going to do. We're going to continue with our online computer. We had a choice of going back to paper, pencil, or computer. The next year's test is going to be computer anyway, so let's practice it while we're still in the held harmless stage so we can be more prepared. Yep, the commissioner has made a decision, and it's really the new MCAS is a computerized test. He's not calling it PARC. It's the next generation MCAS, I believe is how he's phrasing it these days, right? 2.0. To me, if you ask me, and I'll publicly say this to him, I have no problem saying it to him, it's just PARC with a different label. That's in my head only, but we'll see how far off we are because there's so many different curriculums and everything that have been established and put together that's all PARC ready. So it's the same methodology. They're still analyzing it. It's going to be more impact like that. So that's what they're going to do. So that transition, I believe, will begin, well, next year. We'll start seeing some of that transition going into place.
Okay.
We'll have more. I can talk more about that. Yeah.
Okay.
The January. I'll put it in the January meeting, Lori, for the tri-meeting, so it'll be addressed to all three committees.
Great. Okay. Any other thoughts, corrections, anything you want to change?
I think you did a great job, Larry. I really appreciate you. Oh, Angela, I think you did a great job. You know
You're
what?
like
Because
one day
Larry, I
ahead.
did yours tomorrow.
Yes.
I just read yours for tomorrow. So Larry, you did a great job tomorrow. So I'll let you know that then.
You're going to do an awesome job tomorrow.
Great job tomorrow. No, Angela, I think this was great. It was very
Angela, you did an
thorough.
awesome job.
It was.
Very thorough.
I know you just need to know how many meetings everybody was in attendance.
Cheryl put
with,
that
right?
in for me because she knew
Okay.
Tom was going to be missing tonight, so I think everything's in there, and,
Great.
you know. I may just tweak the part about the every student succeeds thing, just to say that it's been passed and signed into law. Is that okay to make that change and still vote for the report? So you can tell what day I wrote it, after the House voted it in and Senate hadn't quite.
Very
But anyway,
timely.
all right, so do I have a motion to approve the annual report to the town for the
So
region?
moved.
Second.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And at our last meeting, Lori and I were able to share a little bit of our takeaways from the conference we went to in November, so we wanted to give you an opportunity, Matt, if you'd care, to share
You
any.
were probably as thorough as I could be, but it was a lot for me the first time, I think, but it was very educational, a lot to absorb, a lot of, I got a preview of this session, which was pretty cool. But it was pretty neat to be at the conference with all state folks there to be able to see what we're doing in our schools. So I think that was a really proud moment to be part of that and to see it. And
Laughingly, Lori shed a couple tears at a couple of the events, hearing the stories, but there was just very impactful panels. I think they're very touching things to take away. The hard part to me about a conference like that is how do you then bundle that up, bring it back, and create impact in the schools, and I think that that's not something that happens overnight, so nothing really further to add to it today, but.
I think there's almost a layering approach too, to be honest with you, because this was my second time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that came back that Angela and I talked about was the OPEB thing, which I know we'll probably talk about again soon. And so I think sometimes it takes a couple of times going, and you're mulling this over and pulling back concepts, and eventually they'll be on our agenda, and we'll try to share information.
Well, even the whole
the delegate conference on where the tests were going in Park and the 2.0 or whatever the case may be. It was pretty thorough, heated discussion
I'm
at
sure that was a
times.
nice heated discussion for everybody.
Can I just say there was an aspect to it that was really annoying, which is that they allowed a group to speak and then said that couldn't be put in the minutes. And I didn't disagree that it shouldn't be in the minutes, but I thought, well, maybe you shouldn't have allowed them to speak.
Yeah, it's kind of like a straw, kind of not an official vote, but kind of a mood on the floor feeling kind of vote that they
Yeah.
wouldn't have. I wanted to add that I do want to thank Matt and Lori for coming because they work like regular jobs and they had to take time out of their professional careers to go to this conference. And I do really appreciate that because you do bring back so much for all of us and the sacrifices you made to be away from your family and your jobs. I appreciate that
Gladly.
very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the vote to approve the agreement with China. Do I have a motion to approve the agreement with China?
So
Yes.
I'll second.
Okay. Any questions or discussion?
Seems pretty thorough.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we need to approve the FY15 audit. Do I have a motion to approve the FY15 audit?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Anyone have any questions or discussion on the audit?
We saw the same comments last year, or in the prior audit, which I think was last year, but perhaps it was the year before. I don't know. But there doesn't seem it would appear that we're not doing anything with those recommendations. Are we just not going to? We haven't gotten to it. We don't agree and think it's important.
I talked to them last year about doing it, we kind of never got around to it, I'm asking again this year to do it. What are the other ones I have in front of me?
Which activities,
So
fund,
that
and
we're gonna have
progress
done.
assessment.
The fraud risk assessment is something that needs to be done, it's a very time-consuming thing, they put in all their audits that we should do, and it's something hopefully this year we'll get to.
The third one was OPEB, yeah.
So again, they put in everyone's audit. Very few school districts or towns are actually doing it, but they are putting it in.
You know what we heard though at the conference was what a lot of school districts are doing is they can't afford to fund it, but they're establishing the accounts so that if they have the ability, they can put some funds into it.
Yeah.
So I really think we should think about at least that move in that direction.
Yeah. At some point, either this year or next year, we really need to sit down and have a discussion as a school committee about a other post-employment benefits trust fund, because now we have the liability for the retired health insurance. We know, and we know how expensive it will be in the future. And one thing we learned from the Mars meeting at the conference is that there's two ways schools are doing this trust fund. Most are at the end of the year. If they happen to have anything left over, they will put it in the trust fund. Another way is to give it a line item that if at any point in the year a crisis occurs where they need to take that money from the line item, they can. And then if they haven't had any emergencies over the course of the year, then they'll put it in. So it's kind of like, my question is, what's a minimum that we can put in? Do we want to establish, can we establish a trust fund without putting anything in it at this point? I just think it's a very wise to start thinking about and being prudent about, because we know that it's just an expense that's going to increase, and we have to think about long-term sustainability. So, okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So
Did we do an official vote to approve it, or was
we
it
just
the
have
first and
the
second?
we just have the first and the second, right?
Yes.
All right. So all those in favor of approving the audit, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Can we just skip over the budget real quick, just to do the donation and then go back to the budget?
Sure.
And that way there, everything else is done on the
Sure.
others.
Do you want, we have a donation from Kellogg's. Do you want to speak on that?
Sure. I actually called to thank them for doing this. We had a family who was designated, who has put Tohoto in for a potential win for sweepstakes of a $1,500 donation to be enclosed to Tohoto, and we won. So it was very nice of this family to do that. They didn't have to do that, but we did win. So I did call them and thank them. And then I said, how did you do this? It says back to school text to win. And it was actually her husband. And she said, you know, I have no idea what he does or how he got into the sweepstakes, but he did it. And so it went to the school. So I'm not sure exactly how Kellogg's does this. If it was, you know, one of those text contests and then your name gets chosen, I don't know. But anyway, so we thank them on their behalf of even thinking of Tohoto and putting our school in. But we do need a vote to approve such amount.
All right. So do I have a vote to approve the $1,500 donation check from Kellogg's Back to School Text to Win sweepstakes?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
Second.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
What do we do with a donation like that?
There's really nothing in there. It says on how that's being used. Diane, no, you cannot cut the check for you.
We were talking about putting it in the trust fund.
You said there you
Yeah,
go.
that's a great idea.
Trust fund. There we go.
There you go.
Open the account.
No, I think, I really don't know where
We didn't
that,
say whose trust fund.
we'd have to call up Kellogg's and actually see if there's an actual requirement of where that funding goes. Does it go towards technology?
Some paperwork on it, and it was really very.
Cereal.
It was very open-ended.
Cereal.
So I think before it's actually used, we'll define a purpose. Then we'll define a purpose for it, and we'll bring it back to school committee so that they know what we're using that fund for.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Now we have the budget presentation.
Okay. First, this actually is very similar to what we've done in the past in regards to the outline, so I don't want to spend too much time on this when we get to the real questions that you might have about the budget. But really, we do want to focus on the fact that this was a process. Again, this year, we worked very closely with our administrative team. I think we started third week of September, maybe? And we're still just trying to get everybody's names together, and we're talking about next year's budget, but that's what we've done. The budget, the way we look at it, is really the financial roadmap that really brings us to our educational needs. So by defining that road and what we need to do determines how much money we need within each line item. So again, we've worked very closely as a team, many hours in my office looking at budgets and trying to determine what we need to handle. Our mission statement, we always keep that as the forefront of our planning process, is to support and challenge all students to achieve personal and academic excellence in a student-centered environment. That was designed by our school committee, and those are the 4 goals, again, that we look at: the student achievement, community engagement, our culture, as well as our resources. And I see our little friend Carol is actually finally been able to make it. She had another meeting earlier this evening, so she was trying to get here as soon as possible. So we thank Carol for coming in. I just said, our friend Carol's finally arrived, but she said you had another meeting. I want to talk a little bit about the enrollment history. I think it's important that we look at the red column on the right side of each grade level is where we are this current year. And you will see that our 12th grade currently has 65 students. That is our smallest grade. Next year we anticipate about 84 students to be coming in as new 6th grade students, and that's before we even think of any school choice potential numbers. So we will have, we're guessing, between 10 to 20 more students than what we have this year. The reason why I say that variance is because oftentimes our 8th grade students might go somewhere else when they go into 9th grade. You can see this year's 9th grade was the biggest drop that we've had in quite some time from 8th to 9th, but we knew that was coming because that was actually a class that actually had a lot of family members that might have had a student that had a sibling that might have already attended another school previously, or it might have been more of the family practice or family tradition to go in other schools. So that actually had the largest bulk. So we knew that was going to happen with that particular number. But you can see that we're keeping, I mean, our next year's senior class is about 85 students. So that's one of our largest graduating classes that I don't know since how long, but okay, since ever. Since forever. So that's good. Lori, you have a question?
Just a question on the 8 and 9. The net change is 7, but I'm guessing some came in, and maybe more, some left, you know what I mean? It wasn't 7 that left, the net was 7.
The difference, the net was 7, right? So we could have had some that moved, could have some that left, could have some that come in, right? But the net differential is 7.
Okay.
What we are looking at right now is our school choice numbers. You can see that 2 years ago, we had 108 students that were school choiced in, and right now we have 90. We do not anticipate that number to go much higher than what we have this year, if higher at all, because we currently have 12 students that are in 12th grade that are school choice. We currently have 12 fifth graders that would be coming here in 6th grade as school choice, so that's an even amount. And our numbers are staying pretty true. So Diane and I will look at those numbers in the spring when we have a better understanding of where we are and to determine whether or not we want to propose any more school choice numbers or not. But one thing that I think is important to keep in mind is although our school choice numbers are going down, our enrollment at the high school is going up. So I think we looked at it today. I think it was something like 11 more students or 9 more students that we had this year. We're looking at next year between 10 to 20 more students. So we need to keep in mind that it's our students that our enrollment is going up at the high school, middle school level, which is important.
Sure. So as we start looking at the budget, we have a few big concerns that we, right off the bat, we're looking at. First is the out-of-district special ed tuitions. Like Karen talked about, we've had quite a few movements this year and some quite costly ones. Also, the use of our revolving funds, we've been relying pretty heavily on those, as well as trying to look forward and use them in a better way. And our health insurance, we've already kind of been, they don't give our rates out until late January, but it does do a 2-year look back. A couple years ago, we had some pretty high claims, so they're telling us expect double-digit increases for this year. So just first to look at the special ed out-of-district tuitions. Because of the increase in placements, we're looking at a $300,000 increase for next year for the out-of-district tuitions, along with $84,000 in increased transportation costs due to that. So we started to take a look at our circuit breaker and our projected costs going forward. So here's kind of a look at the next 5 years. We have a couple of kids that will be aging out. So you'll see there's a big drop off in 19. So we're kind of looking at how can we use our circuit breaker and kind of balance that out. So here's kind of a look at what we anticipate for circuit breaker and how we would normally use it. The big thing you'll notice is that what we would use in 19, which is $650,000, is also the same year that we, in the previous slide, showed that the expenses are going down. So we're trying to look at if we can use more circuit breaker in next year to offset the costs, because we know in 3 years we're going to have a big offset. So the next slide kind of shows at the top, this is what the change in the general fund in the last column would be if we used just what we get in each year. You see we have a $300,000 increase this year, followed by 2 years of decreases. And then what we're looking at for next year is instead of using $378,000 like we normally would do, which is the prior years, looking at using $500,000 so that our increase would be only $191,000. And it would just have a less of a decrease for the following years. No matter what we do in FY20, we'll again see an increase because you can only carry over 1 year of circuit breaker. And so because of that, regardless of how we try to balance it out, you will see an increase then.
So Julie's trying to spread out so the cost isn't so, your budgets aren't going like this so much, but trying to level it out a little bit each year.
Our other big thing is circuit breaker. For this year, we originally had budgeted to use, we started the year just over $1 million. We originally had budgeted to use 783. We could already anticipate some savings, just in new employee hires and things as the year started. So we're going to use only 600,000, and then again for next year budget, using the same amount we budgeted this year, 783.
So that's school choice, not
Yes, this is school choice. In the next slide, you can see where that kind of leaves us. So we're still using more school choice than we take in. But again, we're kind of looking at the same thing with the circuit breaker of the year, that we're going to have a decrease there. Maybe we can balance that out. There's the circuit breaker, the preschool, which we pretty much use what we take in. Athletics, we are going to use $10,000 more next year. We looked forward, we're trying to keep money so that when the track has to be repaired, we're actually getting a little ahead of what we need there, so we can use a little bit more next year for that. And then we're not anticipating any big change with the grants for next year. So those are all revolving accounts. Here's a look at the comparison of all our accounts. You can see administration, instruction, very minimal change. The other school services, that's the big change because of the special ed transportation. Again, operation and maintenance, really no change. The fixed charges, it's the health insurance, and then the tuitions, the district tuitions.
Usually we like to see with the budget, I know we've talked about before when Tom was here, is that when you see an increase in budget, you like to see it being in that instructional piece because you know that's directly going towards all students. But the way that the budget is set up right now, we have an offset year of other expenses that we have to be focusing on. So the DESE descriptions, I think it's important to explain exactly what's in those departments. So when you see administration, that is including all of the school committee, superintendent, business office, administrative technology, and all of our legal fees. Our instructional services focuses on our curriculum, our special education PPS director, our classroom instruction teachers, paraprofessionals, any professional development that we work on, our classroom supplies, and our guidance as well as psychology departments. When we look at other school services, that includes your nursing, your food services, any of our transportation, regular ed and special ed transportation are there, as well as our student activities and any of our athletics. Operations and management is all of our custodial services, our utilities, our maintenance of our buildings, as well as the grounds that we work on. And fixed charges are really our retirement, our insurances, and our leases. And then the tuitions, obviously, that looks at your special ed tuitions as well as your school choice tuition out, as well as, and school choice in, as well as your charter expenses. So that's what we're looking at when we see tuitions.
So here's kind of just the high level, what is making the changes. The administration, its increase is $1,400. There's some contractual raises. Instructional is going down by $10,000. Most of that is due to we're using more school choice, which is then offsetting the raises and other things in that. The other school services, like I said, that's special ed transportation. That's the big driver there. Operation and maintenance, we're increased by like $35. Any of the contractual increases that we are anticipating are actually being offset by our heating oil savings. Bid has already gone out for next year, and we saved about $20,000 over this year. We came in at like $1.72 for next year. So, the fixed cost increase about $126,000. The majority of that is the increase in the health insurance, as well as the retirement assessment goes up every year, and all of our building insurances do go up every year somewhat. And then again, the tuition increase is $162,000.
So just for people who might get a little confused saying they just said 300, now they're saying 162, it's because we're offsetting that other $140,000 additional in your circuit breaker costs. So these cost differentials she's talking about is our general fund budget increase, not the overall increase. So there's a difference between the two.
And the tuitions also include our school choice and our charter, which I believe went down slightly, so that's why it's a little bit less than I think the 191 we showed on the other slide. That would be good. So here's a look at the total, the last 4 years, what our budgets have been. So they've gone up slightly. And this slide shows the overall general fund increase is 4.52. The overall increase, if you look at the increased use of grants and revolving funds, the increase would be 7.37%. And here are the things that we still are waiting to really find out. What is our Chapter 70 school choice numbers? We don't even have this year's actual numbers yet, so we're looking at next year without knowing even the final numbers for this year, as well as what circuit breaker will actually be reimbursed at and what our actual insurance increases will be.
Sometimes with your circuit breaker reimbursement, we don't know until May. Sometimes they don't tell us till the end of May, and we've seen it as low as 40% and as high as 84% probably a couple of years ago, right, Karen, over the last 7 or 8 years?
76 lately.
Yeah, around 76 is what they've done, so you don't even know that until the end. And our insurance increases, we won't know that until the end of January, right? So.
Is there anything on the horizon around regional transportation?
A change in percentage rates, you mean?
It's too early for them to tell us anything.
So this year, districts that counted on that, it didn't happen, is that correct?
No, it did. There was talk of it not happening.
Okay. The increase in...
Yeah, so what will we reimburse this year for transportation? Do we know?
For this year?
Yeah, was this the...
I'm not sure what the number is. And even that, we don't actually ever find that final number out until June, because they go off of the end of year report we just submitted, so they have the cherry sheet numbers, but those aren't what we'll actually get.
Okay.
Again, we have a better understanding, like in the spring, of where things really are going and how we're getting our reimbursements, because they'll say something and then all of a sudden you hear the 9C cuts and you hear about that in January and everything gets shifted about anticipating. So we really don't know a clearer picture until the spring. So I think what I typically like to do, obviously I thank everybody for all of this opportunity, but I'd like to open it up, and I know two of you have been sitting here, like, when are they getting to the budget, probably, but if you have any questions for us, or anybody has any questions for us at this time, this is just a preliminary to give numbers to the town, so that you have an understanding of where we're starting. And this, I will say, is probably the lowest preliminary percentage I think we've ever been able to go. But it doesn't mean that Julie and I were talking about this today. It doesn't mean we have some kind of little magic hat that all of a sudden we're going to get to this miraculous number before May. I mean, the reason why we're able to get to where we are is because your administrative team, and Julie and I included, is we have all been here now for a time and a consistency, and we can see the pattern, and we can also see the progression of what to expect in the future. A few years ago, we couldn't have anticipated using more school choice because we wouldn't have known enough about the other student population and so forth and what those plans are. But we've been able to do that. So not only are we planning now, but we're also looking at a 3 or 5 year projection, which has really been our goal. We're finally there where we can do that. So we don't really anticipate large differences between now and April. Something based on what we find at the end of January, but what that's going to be, we don't know.
I have a pretty simple question.
Sure.
Is this available online or on the website?
So we will be putting it on the website. We'd like to bring it to the school committee first, and then we'll put it on our website.
One of the things that's a little bit concerning, we're getting, as we have a more, experienced team, is we're getting, like, we're better at this preliminary the concern is what towns have gotten used to, like with decreases from the preliminary to the final budget being fairly substantial. And as we've taken a lot of that out of the picture, we have to reset expectations now, because over the next few months, they aren't going to see that huge drop. I think we're going to be hard pressed to drop it down even a couple of percent.
Well, I think the piece too is that Julie and I were able to meet with the FinCom in Berlin last week. And we were just talking today about how we want to also be able to meet with the FinCom in Boylston, as well as the select boards in both towns, to explain where we're at and why we're able to get to the numbers that we're able to get to. So that's our goal, is to be able to explain that to them a little bit further.
I had that same thought, and was glad that he brought it up. I think the alternative is not a good idea, though. I mean, I think we just have to be able to communicate that we're bringing you real numbers as best we can determine at this point in time, and that we're not attempting to game this so that it appears that we are going to have a big cut at some point along the way. But I do think we have to be realistic about, their expectations, and understanding that they're going to look at this as, okay, well, this is early. You're going to keep cutting, right?
Right, and honestly, we've been able to do the clearest picture we've ever been able to do, because we can see the projection, we can see what's happening. Julie's had a lot of conversation with the Department of Ed. Carol and I went to EEC and learned about even the early childhood and what they anticipate with funding. And so there's a lot there that we've been able to do in preparation for this. And I think, like I said, Julie and I were talking about how we want to meet with the Boylston FinCom to explain this to them as well, why we were here, where we were. Believe me, I've gone back and forth. I said, well, we could put this, but I don't want to put an artificial number. That's not who we are. That's not who we've been at all throughout the process. And I also think it's important that our towns also realize that we've been trying to be as realistic and working with their needs all the way through. But this year we have needs, and we need their support on this too. Like we're working both ways on this.
I think the kinds of things they've asked in the past are helpful to plan for, which is I think they want to be reassured that we're not taking last year's budget and just layering on these additional expenses without looking at, are there areas we can move or adjust or reduce in our core budget. And that, I think we have to at least demonstrate that an effort has been made to do that it's not just rolling everything forward and then, oh, now we've got to add these new special ed expenses.
If you look at the line item budget, though, we have a lot of areas where we have reduced. If you look at the supplies and...
That's perfect.
So a lot of things you can see, if there was an increase, there's something else that offsets it. With the exception of really the tuition, we can't make that up. If you look at the whole
There's
overall...
nothing else really kind of left in the budget. You have nowhere else to go.
The overall budget increase, though, is less than the increase of the special ed and health insurance costs. So that there can demonstrate that we have reduced in other areas.
That's a good point.
I think that's a communication piece, is just to make sure to emphasize.
You know I have a very short tenure on the school committee, so I don't have a long history like my colleagues here, but what I heard very clearly in Berlin last year when we met with the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen was that what they appeared to be asking for was a professional, thoughtful presentation early on what the school district was planning and what they were hoping for to meet their educational needs. And that they had not felt that that's what they had gotten before, that they had just suddenly gotten these numbers and they didn't know what to do with them. So what I'm hearing you say in this presentation, well, with this presentation, and with the background that you've both given, in terms of Berlin, I would think that this is a huge incentive, a huge step forward, which will build the district's credibility from a financial perspective with the town. So I applaud you for the work. That doesn't mean it's a slam dunk, but the criticisms that you received last year were heard and you responded to them. And I would feel very comfortable saying to them if the criticism came up again, wait a minute, you said this last year, this is what you're getting this year, this is what you asked for. So let's, set that argument aside and let's look at the numbers.
I think we had a very good conversation with FinCom in Berlin last week. I think they were very happy with our discussion, and I think in Berlin we had more discussion, I think, on capital improvement requests in Berlin than what we did on the budget, because I think they were happy to see where our starting point was at.
Yeah, good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think Berlin would be happy. I think they would see this as an improvement, because having it at 4.7 or 4.5 right now is so much closer and realistic than what we've done in the past. And also, being able to explain, I love your 5-year projection for the circuit breaker and the sped tuitions, et cetera, because that really points out a long-term view and long-term strategic planning, which we're really trying to do. And also, when you also explained that in the past, our best practice was to use the circuit breaker amount that we got in, use that exact amount the next year. But since we're a small district, we don't have those large economies of scale, how can we make this work without these huge fluctuations you're talking about? So now, you'll have a different approach. You're flexible and you'll use more circuit breaker than what you've taken in. So I think those kind of decisions and those kind of thoughts is very respectful to the town, and I do think it'll be well received. And I'm glad you came to this slide, because I just wanted to point it out. When your line item budget comes out and the community looks at it, it's not always easy to wrap your head around that this is just the general fund. So when they see the decrease of $10,000 in classroom instruction, they might immediately think, oh my gosh, are you cutting the teacher? And we'll have to explain that we're not. We actually are increasing the amount that we're spending on classroom instruction, but that is coming not from the blue part of the graph, it's coming from the red part of the graph, it's coming from school choice money that is being paid for the extra contractual increases in salary rather than just the general fund. So, I did ask Julie today if at some point in the future when she has time, I'm just curious to see more of a line item budget for the revolving funds so that we have a truer picture of what the actual costs are. For example, the athletics, we spend, I think it's 119 or something like that on the line item budget from the general fund, but yet we're using 80,000, I think, don't quote me, from the revolving athletic funds. So really, the true cost of running the athletic program is the 190,000. It's not 119,000. Just some things like that I think will be helpful for me and might be helpful for the rest of the committee too. So thank you. This is, every year I get so pleased because the budget presentations I think just keep getting better and better. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Now we just need a motion to approve $8,326,550 for the Tohoto, the Berlin Boylston Regional School District.
Okay. So moved.
Second.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay. Any other questions from the community? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. School committee comments, future agenda items. I think in the future we're going to talk about the park, revisit, and the other thing. Future agenda item. Okay. Any other future agenda items or school committee comment?
Did we
Okay.
get presents, Angela?
Oh, yes, and I do hope these are under $50.
They absolutely are. Not under 50 yen, though, probably, $50.
Thank you.
Thank you.
much.
I have a quick question on an old
Yes.
item that we had, which
What'd you
was
get,
the
Chelsea?
arbor, the trees, and the assessment.
Oh,
Did we ever find out steps or process that occurred with that?
well, they did plant some trees.
They did plant things.
Eighth grade
Okay.
horticulture class and the kindergarten.
Because didn't we have like the state was here, right, and referencing, is that a finalized, complete process or ongoing?
For the community.
For the trees.
Do they have more
It's
trees to
done.
plant?
It was a
Is that what you're asking?
one-time.
Okay,
It was all
just
done
curious,
at
good.
planning.
Just never heard
It's
of it.
completed, we're doing well. Being taken care of.
Any other
Yeah,
comments? Okay. We do have a need for executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for union personnel and non-union personnel.
And not to open and.
And not to open, and not to reconvene in open session. Okay, so I think I'm going to need a roll call vote to go to executive session.
You also need a motion.
And
a second.
Oh, thank you, Larry, for, you can tell who our seasoned school committee member is. All right, so do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
Second.
Now I can take the roll call? Okay, Cliff?
Yeah.
Lori?
Yes.
Larry?
Aye.
Matt?
Yes.
Aye. Okay, thank you.